The Sumerian lived in Mesopotamia at 5000 BC to 1750 BC. Their gods were called Anunnaki, or from those who heavens came. And their technology was amazing. They invented the wheel, the plough, writing. So once they'd genetically engineered humans, the Anunnaki, they started spreading out, as you see in this map. Started from Africa, moved upwards towards Egypt, and then spread west and east. Now in Europe, the Neanderthals were drove to extinction by the Anunnaki because they made the best slaves. The proof of this is the 9,000-year-old Cheddar Man. It was found in Goth's Cave in Cheddar Grove, Somerset, England, a black Briton that lived 9,000 years ago. Now in 2011, the Baltic Sea anomaly was found. It's shaped like a spaceship. It's got a 1,000-foot trail which goes through a mountain or a hill. So it's gone with some force. It's not just like people say, a battleship gun. Well, that would have gone straight down, I suppose. It wouldn't have gone through a mountain and left a trail. Now the Nebra sky disk is the oldest known depiction of the Pleiades. You can see it in the top right. This was in 1600 BC and it's from Nebra, Germany. This part of the sky must have been very important to them. Also, the Pleiades are represented by the bull a lot of the time. You can see this in early European cave drawings, always of the bull. This is because the Pleiades were located in the Taurus constellation, and early Europeans knew where they came from. We all know the Anunnaki had elongated skulls, and this is why you find head binding in Anunnaki-controlled territories. This includes Africa, North America, and South America. Now, the Anunnaki created humans for slave workers. This is the different Sumerian cultures describing how they was created by the Anunnaki. They treated humans like slaves. They ate human sacrifices, worked people to death, and we was also pawns in their armies. The Indian Vedic text talks of a monkey army. The Pleiadian and Anunnaki War 2000 BC. So when the Pleiadians came to Earth, they was called the Hebrew or Hebrew by the Anunnaki. Once they'd landed, they set up a forward operating base in Europe, and then they went for the invasion of the Anunnaki territory. But the first invasion failed, with many prisoners taken, represented by the taming of the bull in the Gilgamesh epic. They was then taken into slavery. This is where the Hebrew people come from, in the biblical epic. Once the Anunnaki defeated the Hebrew, they invented games to remember their victory, like bullfighting and bull leaping. If you look at where the bullfighters actually pierced the bull, it's where in the Taurus constellation the Pleiades are found. Now the Pleiadians regrouped and the second attempt was made, but this time it was successful.
Research that we're hearing today that shows half of all Western European men are somehow related to the Egyptian pharaoh King Tutankhamun. CTV's Marella Fernandez here with more on this. Marella, what's up with this?
It's really interesting, actually.
Yeah.
So this is coming out of Switzerland, and the researchers there have found that not only do half of Western European men have this connection, genetic profile connection, but 70% of men in Britain, which is astounding. But they all have the same genetic profile or same ancestry as King Tut from Egypt way back when. And here's what's really shocking about this. Less than 1% of modern day Egyptians have that same connection. So it kind of makes you wonder, well, if he's Egyptian, but the ancestry isn't Egyptian, how did it evolve? Which way did it move? And it looks like it didn't start in Egypt, but it evolved and went to Egypt and may have started in Europe, and that's why all the Europeans have this background.
This was a rescue attempt. Once the rescue attempt had gone smoothly, the Hebrew fought a bloody war against the Anunnaki in the Middle East. They seemed to be winning until they nuked the Middle East from Africa. Evidence for this can be found in the Sinai Peninsula by the blackened holes in the ground. The Sumerian text described the destruction. The flood swept over the land. After the flood had swept over the land, kingship had descended from heaven for a second time. It must have been an advanced civilization to take out the Anunnaki. Now, the nuclear weapons was fired from Africa. This is in one of the Sumerian texts. In the Dead Sea, you find alarming rates of radiation. Now, Alexander the Great. The first recorded incident regarding Alexander the Great and UFOs was recorded in 329 BC. Alexander decided to invade India and was attempting to cross the river Indus to engage the Indian army when gleaming silver shields swooped down and made several passes over the battle. Alexander the Great's story is also told in Islam under a different name. They call him Dal-Karairi. And when he went to the land, they said, Dal-Karairi, surely Gog and Magog make mischief in the land. Shall we pay you a tribute on condition that you should raise a banner between us and them? He said, I will make a fortified barrier between you and them. Bring me blocks of iron until when we had filled up the space between the two mountainsides. Now, Alexander was always depicted with horns on his head. Could this be anything to do with Pleiadians? As you notice from this picture on the left, there's a bull on the horse's rear. Now, the story tells of Alexander sealing an entrance, but where was the entrance? In the story, it gives clues, subtle clues, but it's very hard to distinguish where exactly this happened. There's in my mind, there's two places this could be. This is either the Tibet or in the Sinai Peninsula. Blow until when he had made it fire, he said, bring me molten brass, which I may pour over it. So they were not able to scale it, nor could they make a hole in it, he said. This is a mercy from my Lord, but when the promise of my Lord comes to pass, he will make it level with the ground, and the promise of my Lord is ever true. Now, something to note here is he's pouring molten brass, so over it, and they would not be able to scale it, nor could they make a hole in it. This sounds to me like something in the ground, like you'd block up an hole in the ground. You wouldn't pour molten brass to make a wall and a gate, would you? So this is a very strange story. Now, Alexander Romance is some tales of Alexander's life, but mythical apparently. The legend of Gog and Magog and the gates were also in the Island Romance. Goth and Magoth are both kings of the unclean nations, driven beyond the mountain pass by Alexander, and blocked from returning by his new wall. Gog and Magog are said to engage in human cannibalism in the romances. They have also been depicted on medieval cosmological maps, sometimes alongside Alexander's Wall. So who is Gog and Magog? A legend was attached to Gog and Magog by the time of the Roman period, that the gates of Alexander were erected by Alexander the Great to repel the tribe. Romanized Jewish historian Josephus knew them as a nation descended from Magog the Japhite, as in Genesis, and explained them to be the Scythians. In the hands of the early Christian writers they became apocalyptic hordes, and throughout the medieval period variously identified as the Huns, the Kazakhs, the Mongols, or other nomads. The Huns and the Scythians united to take Europe, but was defeated. So the Scythians were a group of Iranian people known as the Eurasian nomads, who inhabited the western and central Eurasian steppes from about the 9th century BC until the 1st century BC. So the Anunnaki and the Huns. The Huns were nomadic people who lived in Eastern Europe, the Caucasus and the Central Asia between the 4th century AD and the 6th century AD. According to European tradition, they were first reported living in the east of the Volga River, in the area that was part of Scythia at the time. The Huns' arrival is associated with the migration westward of the Scythian people, the Alans, by 370 AD. The Huns had arrived on the Volga, and by 430 AD the Huns had established a vast if short-lived dominance in Europe. First of all, Attila the Hun's empire fell in 465 AD. The Khazar Empire went from 470 AD to 965 AD, and then the Akhenatsis from 1000 AD to present day. Now we know the Anunnaki was masters of DNA manipulation, genetics. Were the Mongols an Anunnaki cloned army? Now the same can be said about Islam and Allah. Is Allah the god of the Bible, or is Allah the moon god of ancient Arabia? Now a few things to note is, the Muslim holy month of Ramadan starts at the sighting new crescent moon. Apparently the Anunnaki fled to the moon, or they have a moon base. They pray while bowing their head towards the house of Allah in Mecca that houses a meteorite. The Muslim holy month of Ramadan starts at the sighting of a new crescent moon. Was Mecca a cloning facility? There was a few attempts made to take back Europe by the Anunnaki. The French Renaissance was one of these attempts, which it failed, but it did start capitalism. Also the Bolsheviks in Russia. Britain released nearly half the world's population from slavery at the height of its power. In 1938, Britain released half the world's population from slavery. Once the Anunnaki take over a country, slavery is the first thing they implement. So you can tell an Anunnaki civilization just by looking at it. The Anunnaki, Ashkenazis and the Nazis are all the same thing.
In September of 1991, the Space Shuttle Discovery captured an unidentified object on film. What you're seeing now is actual footage shot by NASA cameras from that shuttle mission. Watch the top of your screen. Note the object that moves from right to left. Two mysterious flashes, and it makes an immediate 135-degree turn and accelerates. This is followed by a strange streak of light, which seems to narrowly miss the unknown object. This dramatic footage has been in dispute since it was shot.
I studied it extensively over maybe a 2-year period at least.
University of Nebraska physicist Jack Kasher worked for nearly 10 years in the research and development of a Star Wars defense system for the upper atmosphere. His quantitative analysis of the NASA footage concludes that the UFO cannot be explained. as a natural phenomenon.
It's clearly above the atmosphere and air glow of the Earth. It maneuvers, it changes direction, it accelerates, and so the only thing really left is spacecraft.
We told you about a possible missile, rocket, or maybe airplane that was seen off the coast of California on Monday. Today, there still aren't many answers as to what it actually was, but one woman says she has some answers. You'd be surprised to find out where she's getting her information from. Colleen Thomas is a home health administrator turned physicist who specializes in the science of creation. And she's the mother of a race of good aliens here on Earth called Pleiadians. She says she knows exactly what happened with that missile, and she joins me now from Roseville, California. Colleen, thanks so much for joining me. First of all, tell me what you know about what happened with that supposed missile.
It was I got in my ear, as it were, as I was sleeping, that it was a missile fire, President Obama trying to start a war with Iran. The Pleiadians downed the missile harmlessly at sea, and then last night from San Diego, our government fired another ICBM at the Pleiadians this time. But the Pleiadian ships are able to change density and do all kinds of things that these guys on this planet have never imagined. And a rocket could pass right through them and not harm them. And plus, they can outrun it too if they wanted to just get out of the way. But it's really kind of silly to think that we can take on a race that's been around for many, many, many millions of eons longer than the reptilians.
And really briefly, Colleen, some people might not know exactly who the Pleiadians were, so why would President Obama want to fire an ICBM at the Pleiadians?
Because they're here to rescue the human beings who are being enslaved on this planet and forced into a paradigm of a super oligarchy that favors the Bilderberg Group and the Illuminati and is completely and utterly without any conscience towards the human beings whatsoever. They poison us deliberately in order for us to have to buy pharmaceuticals so that they can string our miserable little lives along on pharmaceuticals for the rest of our, aging days. There's no need for us to be in the kind of physical condition that we are in. But they put chemtrails in collusion with BP, British Petroleum. They put chemicals in jet fuel, and those chemicals end up getting sprayed in these minute particulates that rain down on our food, on our crops, and in our water. There's lithium in those chemtrails. There's also fluoride and a lot of other heavy metals that are dispersed in the air as chaff, so that the American government can talk to one another militarily without being listened in upon by other foreign countries. They know this stuff is toxic for us, but there's money in toxifying us. And so they work in collusion with the pharmaceutical companies with these backdoor deals, changing the laws and making everything favorable for these guys, but not favorable for the humans whatsoever. Humans are just commerce to these people, and they're also meat to these people. They not only kill and eat us, they sell our dead bodies on a meat market of their own kind that goes passing by here every 50 years. And I got that straight from a CIA agent.
In this video I'd like to explain to you how I think the Sea Peoples are the Pleiadian Navy or the Heibaru Navy. So who are the Sea Peoples? The Sea Peoples are a purported seafaring confederation that attacked ancient Egypt and other regions of the East Mediterranean prior to and during the Late Bronze Age collapse 1200 to 900 BC. The truth is, nobody knows who the Sea Peoples are. Their origins are uncertain. The various Sea Peoples have been proposed to have originated from places that include Western Asian Minor, the Aegean, the Mediterranean islands and the southern Europe. They invaded Anatolia, Syria, Canaan, Phoenicia, Cyprus and Egypt. Unidentified in the eyes of most scholars, and the origins of the various groups are the source of much speculation. Existing theories variously propose equating them with several Aegean tribes, raiders from Central Europe, scattered soldiers who turn to piracy or who have become refugees, and links with natural disasters such as earthquakes or climate shifts. So scientists say all this chaos was caused by earthquakes or climate change. These unknown peoples destroyed all known civilization. As you can see by the black dots, these are the places that were destroyed. These were all major towns, major cities. This was all recorded in Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, and the book of Joshua and Judges in the Old Testament. 1200 BC seen a drastic change that ushered in the Iron Age and brought in democracy, but not before the Dark Ages. Depicted with horns like the Vikings, even though we know they didn't wear them. Egyptian records, which refer to more than one of the 9 peoples, found in 6 different sources. From 1200 to 900 BC, this is when civilization collapsed. This is also the time period of Akhenaten, King Tut and Ramses II. This is also the time of the Exodus and also the Trojan War. The Sea People attacked in 1207 BC and again in 1177 BC, after which writings cease everywhere apart from Egypt, and it takes Egypt many hundreds of years to regain it. The Medinet Habu inscriptions from which the Sea People's concept was first described remains the primary source and the basis of virtually all significant discussions of them. Ramses III was the pharaoh in charge when the final battle. It seems that this must have been the person that launched the nuclear weapons from Africa. In Ramses III, Ramses wrote of 7 tribes that united against him. He was clearly dark-skinned by the pictures, and this was the last surviving civilization. It never recovered and it was never the same again. The Sea People just vanished afterwards. They conquered known civilization and then just vanished without any trace, unless you know what you're looking for. To my knowledge, once Ramses III fired the nuclear weapon, this caused a massive nuclear war. Also, as the Pleiadians moved down, they conquered the Hittite, the Canaanites. They would have mixed with them people and produced offspring. So these people would have been Pleiadian and Annunaki blood. You see this in Iran nowadays. Some people fled to North India and some people fled to Europe. Now the Philistines, this is where people think the Sea People came from. As you can see, Dagon, the fish-headed god, it looks very much like a cardinal's priest hat. Also, Goliath was a Philistine. Goliath of Gath was the biblical warrior defeated by the young David in the book of Samuel. Goliath appears in chapter 2 of the Quran also, in the narrative of David and Saul's battle against the Philistines. Now in this picture, from 1888, You see the shield on the right hand side of the picture with the bull's head. Could this represent the Pleiadians? Now at 1200 BC, this is when all the empires start to fall. The Canaanite civilization falls, the Egyptian civilization barely holds on, and this is all in a 50-year period of each other. This ushered in the Dark Age, and it takes 200 to 300 years to recover. Then we start to see civilization reappear. We see the rise of the states in Greece. The Greek Dark Ages last from 1100 BC to 800 BC, and then the rebirth of Greece, known as the Archaic period, the revival of the Greek economy, and also the cultural and political revival. Now the Achaean warriors was also pictured with horned helmets. They ruled from 1260 to 1180 BC. They also took part in the destruction of Troy. Emil Farah, a Swiss Hittitologist who worked on the Bolgalex tablets in Berlin, said the Achaeans of pre-Homeric Greece were directly associated with the term land of Annunaki, mentioned in the Hittite text. Cadmus from Phoenicia, Deimos from Egypt, and Pelops from Anatolia each gained a foothold in the mainland Greece and were assimilated and Hellenized. Helen, Graphikos, Magnus and Macedon were sons of the Deucalion and Pyrrhian, the only people who survived the Great Flood. Now, I want to talk about the Great Flood. In my eyes, this weren't the Great Flood as we think of it, as water. This was the Great Flood of the nuclear war, if you like. So, victims from history and mythology include, there was a lot of actual rape that went on at this time as well. You see this in Greece and in Italy. Was this the Anunnaki navy, seeing as all the women had been destroyed and killed? Was this like, if you can imagine today, if there was a nuclear war and an aircraft carrier survived, it would just be full of men, and then they turned up at Greece and in Italy, which became Rome, and the stories tell you exactly what was happening. Antiope from Greek mythology, raped by Zeus. Cassandra from Greek mythology, raped by Ajax the Lesser. Chrysippus from Greek mythology, raped by his tutor Larius. Demeter was raped by Poseidon to become the mother of Desponia. She was also raped by Zeus to become the mother of Prosome. Also, the Sabine women were raped by the founders of Rome according to its legendary history, 753 BC. Now, wherever you see horned warriors, in my opinion, this is where the Heibiru or Pleiadians, this is their civilization. They was always depicted with horns. This goes to the samurai. The samurai started in 700 BC. If you notice, there's a pattern here. These civilizations start to rise about 700 BC again. Now, the samurai, they lasted till 1876 AD. Different horned warriors throughout the world. The Albanians, the Teutonic Knights, the Persians. Now, we all know that Vikings are always depicted with horns on their head, but didn't actually have horns on their helmets. This was just to represent them as being Pleiadian. A Greek force of approximately 7,000 men marched north to block the pass. In the middle of 480 BC, the Persian army, alleged by the ancient sources to have numbered over 1 million. Was this an Anunnaki cloned army? The Kurds and Iranians are Anunnaki and Pleiadian mixed bloods. The Turks have forbidden Kurds to speak their Indo-European language, but the Turks originally came from Mongolia and Central Asia. The Bahrains. Bahrain is Vedic Hinduism. It's a caste of people. Members are subdivided into numerous communities known as Gotras. Brahmin priests and teachers were engaged in attaining the highest spiritual knowledge. The term Brahmin meant originally one possessed of Brahman, a mysterious magical force widely known to modern anthropologists by the Malaysian word mana. So who are the Brahmin? By the end of the Vedic period dating 1500 BC to 1000 BC, the term was used for all members of the priestly class. This system, which was copied in part by other classes, has survived to this present day. The Rig Veda is the oldest and perhaps most sacred of all Hindu scriptures. It contains the mythological origin of the Brahmin. Now the Mahabharata is one of the two major Sanskrit epics of ancient India, the other being the Ramayana. The Mahabharata is an epic legendary narrative of the Kurukshetra wars and the fates of the Kaurava and the Pandava princes. Brahma is the core of the entire universe, thus Brahma can also be described as the nucleus. Hence Brahmastra directly translates to nuclear weapon. The effects of the Brahmastra are mentioned in the epic. Mass destruction, drought, people evaporated within a minute, men and women became infertile and deformed, the nails and hair come off. There were few more powerful nuclear weapons above this. Nekata, given to Karna by Lord Indra after he gave away his Kadutra. This weapon resembles a rocket or a missile. It could be voice activated, had a rotating fiery tail and a gleaming head. It wasn't an arrow but a dart, similar to a javelin. Albeit very powerful, an intelligent machine, it pierced through the Gashrat's chest and shot to the sky. Like a rocket, it diminished into space. Narayantra, an artificial intelligent flying saucer. It hovers over the enemy troops and fires iron balls at those who wish to fight. The only way to survive is by bowing down before it. This machine spares those who duck down and give up before the weapon. The caller of this weapon can control its speed and intensity. However, once all the enemies give up, the weapon goes back. It is so powerful that the one who created it had Hindu professionalism of war in mind. Thus, if the caller decides to call it again, even after the enemies have surrendered, the Nasrata will kill the caller himself. So were nuclear weapons really used in the famed war? I think the answer is yes. 1.8 million people died in 1400 BC. The Adiprava of the Mahabharata describes Kauranva army to be 11 Ashkenazis and the Pandava army to be 7 Ashkenazis. That's almost over 1.8 million soldiers. Yudhishthira answered 1,660,000,000 and 20,000 men have fallen in this battle. Of the heroes that have escaped, the numbers is 240,000. A Sumerian tablet found in Iraq describes what I think is a battle. From the first drink, when he first dipped beneath the mantle, for the firmament's black nectar, he was destined to come. Centuries later they did come. In the most violent fashion they came, and disrupted the ways of old, and the people of the land were confined to their homes. The invaders fought one another, the invaders fought each other for the spoils of the land, for the black nectar. The gods looked sadly at what people were doing, and took counsel among themselves for the remedy. All the while the invaders raged on. To the people's horrified witness, the invaders raged on. When the ugly omen appeared in the desert, the usurpers took no heed. There in the place of Dilnun, the great gods assembled. The great gods assembled in Dilmun. Nir-Hursag delivered the charge before Enki, and the fate of the peoples was sealed. The Roman poet Virgil refers to this belief when he depicts Aeneas as escaping the fall of Troy, coming to Latium to found a line descending to Romulus, first king of Rome. In Sardinia, archaeological remains suggest the presence of sea people. Some archaeologists believe that the Sheridan are identifiable with the Nugeric Sardinians. As you can see by these knives, it was very advanced. And the walls are so thick. To me, this is where the Pleiadians set up a forward operating base. You can see some strange symbols. If you look at the Nugeric Sardinians, there's some very strange weapons and very advanced things. The Sumerians referred to the gods as the Din-Jir, which when spelled out resembles a multi-stage rocket. The ancient Egyptians also depict such a vehicle in the pharaoh's ascent to heaven. This is a Celtic helmet with coral and bronze decorations. This was found around 400 BC in a tomb in southern Italy. As you can see, a horned helmet again. So the pre-Roman Italians, or the Pleiadians, all had horned helmets. This goes to the Samnite warriors, South Italiac. These were all Pleiadians. And it was all around the same time, around 400 BC.
Another legendary race of fair-skinned people from New Zealand with golden hair, and they were agriculturalists. They carved out amphitheaters, and these people were said to be tall, had very white skin, and were likely the origin of the famous tattoos that you see.
Fully facial tattoo, which was only for the ones of high rank. People think everyone got tattoos in the old days. They're wrong. 5 to 10% at the most. You had to be something to deserve it, especially a facial tattoo. The people that were basically here before we got here, okay? Well known to be, tall, fair-skinned, definitely not little fairies.
Many extraterrestrial civilizations have walked the face of the earth, both humanoid and non-humanoid races, and they have done so long before man ever existed. Together with mankind, they have written the history of this planet. Therefore, it is important to realise that you cannot really understand the history of mankind, nor the history of Earth, until you are aware of the part that was played by these extraterrestrial civilizations. This means that you cannot understand the history of mankind if you do not know that the Homo sapiens were not a product of natural evolution, but was in fact the result of a crossbreed of genes of terrane primates and humanoid aliens. Earth was thus visited by humanoid races from Lyra, Vega, Sirius, Orion and the Pleiades, and all of them established colonies on this planet. At first, only a small group of aliens settled down on Earth. Later on, however, members of the Sirian group, i.e. a group of extraterrestrials from Sirius, Orion and the Pleiades, came in far larger numbers. At a given moment in time, members of the Sirian group started needing workers to assist them in colonizing the planet. Through genetic manipulation, they created mankind by blending their own DNA with the DNA of Earth's primates and the predecessors of man, Neanderthal. From that moment on, Earth became the scene of constant disputes between mainly two groups of alien civilizations. On one hand, there are the Sirians, joined by some vegans, some renegade Pleiadians and some Orion civilizations. On the other hand, there are the Pleiadians and Lyrans, also joined by some Aryan civilizations. The fights nearly always were over mankind, and on several occasions they interfered in our history. The stories of these interventions can be found in all the ancient mythologies that speak of how the gods keep on meddling in human affairs, and keep having fights among each other over their interventions. Quite often these mythological stories mention snake people, which usually is a reference to the Syrians, whereas bird, eagle or cat people usually refer to the Lyrans or Pleiadians, to them as the 7 daughters of Atlas. More than any other star system, the Pleiades have captured the attention of both the ancient and modern civilization. The Pleiades group is the home of the humanoid species. The Pleiades are most similar to Earth humans. Earth humans were supposedly created by using mainly Pleiadian DNA. The physical characteristics of the Pleiadians splintered off from the Lyran group, some used and infused with Earth genetics too, mainly Caucasian. With a lot of variety, much like on Earth, they can range from 5 feet to 7 feet. Their eyes are bigger than humans, and the tone of the colour of their eyes is different too. Many blonde or Nordic type aliens that contactees encounter come from the Pleiades, or at least that's where they claim. A number of authors also mention a Pleiadian race which looks like the Latin American Indians, Mayans, Incas, etc. The Pleiadians are part of the Federation of Planets. Through they are some renegade breakaway factions. Many of these join the Draconian Empire, while others prefer to stay neutral. So we know the Anunnaki landed in Africa, mixed DNA, and then they spread the southern hemisphere. I don't know if that was something to do with the temperature, that they can't, because they have DNA of the reptilians apparently, so is this due to that? I don't know. It's like the pyramids were made for a certain temperature also, so was this for something that weren't used to the temperature of Earth? You know, like a aquarium. We know that the Heibaru, the Shasu, and also the Sea People attacked and destroyed most of the ancient world. It seemed like they must have got to the Sinai Peninsula with all their army, and then there was nuked, like a tactical nuke if you like. So you can imagine if all our army was nuked, this would leave us with really nothing, you know. So this is, I think, what happened. There was a lot of army staged all over the Middle East, and I think the Anunnaki, there is a story of how, I think it was Enki who hid nuclear weapons in a cave in South Africa. Maybe this is what happened, and then they fired the 8 nuclear weapons, destroyed the Heibaru armies, all their armaments. You can imagine if this happened to the US or anything like that, it'd leave your population totally open to invasion. Pleiadians escaped to North India to become the Bahrain. Also, we know that the Heibai went to Japan. We know the story of the Sky People in Southern America, the Fairy People in New Zealand, This didn't happen in the time frame, but I'm just showing you how Europe was taken. So that the Muslims invaded Spain, took over Spain. The Romans invaded Italy, took over most of Europe. The Persians invaded Greece. The Mongolians invaded from the east, teamed up with the Kazakhs and the Huns. All of Europe was lost. This is in the time frame of the Romans, the Huns, the Mongolians. This is when the Romans took Britain. And then this is the time frame of the barbarians. Now at this point, it's to note that everyone had mixed blood now, because, well, apart from the Scottish, the Welsh, the Irish, the Norse peoples, but everyone in mainland Europe was mixed blood now, Anunnaki and Pleiadian. So really they had no ball in the game anymore. It's like, I think when the Anunnaki took over a country, they'd make all the top people in that country marry into their royal families. You see that a lot now today. So what this does is this puts, if you like, if you can imagine marrying into the Illuminati, if you like, then you have children, so you're defending your children even though you're defending that Illuminati, you know, in a way. So this is what happened. A lot of the blood was mixed, like in Rome and Greece there was a lot of rape going on, I can imagine in Spain. So these people have mixed blood, so that they don't really have a side then to choose, you know, they can choose either side, if you like. This is where the barbarians started taking back over Europe. The Norse people, the Vikings invaded England. The Romans had to evacuate. And then the barbarians took Rome. We have the Spanish invasion, also the French invasion. Both of them tried to invade Britain and failed. And after Napoleon, then France fell. Something to note as well, Napoleon's wife did think she was a reincarnation of Isis, Now, is reincarnation just a different way of saying cloning? So it's very strange. You need to look into the cloning and people about talking about reincarnation. It's very strange. So then once Europe was nearly totally taken back, this is when the Crusades happened. So you had the United Europe to go to Jerusalem. Also, they spread Christianity throughout Russia. Well, this is how we ended up, just before the British Empire. And then the British spread out, also the Spanish and British spread, started building empires. The Norse spread to Greenland and Iceland. The British went to America, North America. The Spanish went to South America. This is when Africa was colonised. This is when the British Empire took the Middle East. And the British also went to India and Australia. So the Kazakhs fell in 1000 AD. And this must have been a new plan by the Anunnaki. They must have thought, we can't defeat them with armies, so they started going more, if you like, bribing people, bribing leaders of countries, mixing up the history. They probably instigated the church, to change history, infiltrated different religions. They probably infiltrated the church to change history, so no one knew what was going on. We didn't know our enemies. We didn't know who we was fighting. We forgot our history. It also sounds like what Donald Marshall was saying about the proboscis taking over the human. We see this in other animals, so I can see it's possible. So it's strange, but Europe seemed to just, like I say, they had mixed blood, so I think like the Queen of England can trace her blood back to